What's up everyone, I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and in this very fun video we are going to look into a couple different ways to manipulate our data. Because a lot of times after you get data into your app, you're going to want to either filter or sort on it or even transform it so that the data that we put on the screen is maybe a subset of the original data. There are three main ways that we're going to look at in this video, and the first one is sorting, and that's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to sort the data so that we can go either alphabetically, we can go by maybe the most to the least points, something like that. The second way we're going to look at is with a filter. So we could filter on our data for maybe only users that include a certain letter in their name, or if you only wanted to include premium users in a section of your app, something like that. And the third thing we're going to look at is map. And when we use a map, we can transform our data from one type to another type. So we're going to run through a couple examples on why that would be relevant and of course how to do it. Overall, this video is going to be super fun. I'm going to show you guys a couple tricks along the way on how we can really shorten our code and make it very professional looking. So I think you guys are going to enjoy it. With that said, I'm excited to share it. Let's take a look.
All right, welcome back everyone. As you probably guessed, I'm back in our Xcode project. Let's right-click the navigator and create a new file for this video. This is going to be a SwiftUI view, and let's call it Arrays Bootcamp. Go ahead and click Create, and let's click Resume on the canvas. I'm going to close the navigator and make this bigger so you guys can see it. All right, and let's get started by creating a data model that we can use in our app. Let's create a struct and let's just call it a user model to simulate like a user in our app. Let's make it conform to identifiable so that we can use it in a for each. And then we'll open the brackets and we'll set the ID. We'll say let ID equals UUID, open close parentheses, dot string. Let's give our user names. We'll say let name of type string. Let's give them maybe some points. Say let points of type int. And then let's give them another let is verified of type bool. So all of our users will have a name. Let's make this points. They'll have a certain number of points and then whether or not they are verified in our app. And now before we put any data into our app, we're going to create a view model because it's very common in SwiftUI to use the MVVM architecture, and I want to get you guys used to how you would actually do this in a production app. So let's create a view model here quickly. We'll make a class. We'll say array modification view model. Let's call it that. Let's make this conform to observable object so that we can observe it in our view, and we'll open the brackets. Let's initialize an instance of this in the view. So we'll do @stateObject var. Let's just call it VM for view model, and we'll set it equal to an array modification view model. Probably not the best name for the view model, but you guys get the point here. Let's create an init in the view model so that when we create it, we can call some functions. Let's create another func get users. Open and close parentheses, open the brackets. In our init, we'll call get users. And obviously in a real app, you would go and fetch some users from your database, but we're just going to create some fake users and then just append them to a data array. So first, let's create some fake users. We'll say let user1 equals user model, and let's give them a name. I'm going to say Nick, 5 points, verified true. And I'm just going to copy and paste this maybe 10 times. I'll zoom out here so you guys can see it a little better. And let's just make all these users different. So 2, 3, 4. Let's just do 10. All right, let's change up the names. We'll do Nick, Chris, Joe. And let's change up the points so everyone has different amount of points. So we'll do 0, maybe 20, 50. And let's just give them different is verified. So let's do true, false, and just go random here. You guys don't have to do the same things as me. We're just trying to create a bunch of random users that have different names, points, and is verified. Then let's just append these to an array. So we need to create an array. So we'll say at published var, let's call it data array of type array of user model. And we'll set it equal to a blank array. And then we'll take all of our users and we'll say self.dataArray.append. And we're looking for the one with the contents of, because we can append a sequence. So we can, instead of appending all of these at 10 different times, we can append them all together with the contents of. And we're just going to create an array in here. Then we're just going to add all of our users. So user 1, comma, and I will just paste this a bunch of times, and we're going to change it up. So user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So when we create the view model, call get users will create 10 fake users, append them to our data array. Let's put this data array on the screen. So back down in our view, we'll keep this pretty simple. We'll create a scroll view, open the brackets. Let's add a VStack. And actually, let's give it a little bit of spacing, maybe 20. Inside the VStack, we're going to do a for each. Use the first completion because we are already conforming to identifiable way up at the top here, identifiable. So we can use it in a for each. We're going to, the data here will be our VM, which is our view model right here, dot data array. And then the content, we'll hit enter. We don't need this extra completion here. And we're looping on each user. Inside the for each, let's add just a very simple VStack, open the brackets. Let's start at the top of the VStack with the user's name. So we'll say text user.name. Below that, we'll add an HStack. On the left side of the HStack, we'll add another text. This one will say points, colon, backslash, open close parentheses, and we'll end the user.points. Then we'll add a spacer. And on the right side, we'll say if user.isVerified. If they're verified, let's add a little verification badge. So let's just add image, system name, flame.fill we'll do here. And let's resume the canvas, see what we got. I think we might have to modify it a little bit. This looks decent. Let's align the VStack to the left. So let's do alignment dot leading. Let's make the user's name font dot headline. On the VStack, let's give it a foreground color of white. So we have white text. Let's give it a background color of blue with a corner radius of 10. Let's add some padding before the background and then maybe a little bit of padding horizontal after. That looks pretty good. Let's put the spacing down to 10. So very simple here. I'm not trying to do anything fancy with this UI. I just want a list of all of our users on the app. And it looks like this is what we have. We can press play on the canvas and we can scroll around. We see our 10 users. We have their name, the number of points is pulling through, and then if they're verified, we have the verified icon on the right side. Now it's time to get into the good stuff. So back up, and I'm going to, on the get users, I'm going to click right here in the front of this bracket and press Command Option with the left arrow. And another way of doing that, I could go to the editor and click cold folding, Command Option left arrow to fold up the code. So I just folded up that function so it's out of the way. And what we're going to do is create another array here. We'll call it @published var filtered array of type, and it will be an array of user model. And we'll set this equal to a blank array as well. And basically what we're going to do is after we get users, we are going to filter all of those users for something specific. So maybe we wanted only people with points greater than 5, or only people that are verified, something like that. Because filtering on the data is super common in real apps. So let's create another func update filtered array, open close parentheses, open the brackets. And there's 3 main ways to modify array data. The first one and easiest one is going to be sort, the second is a filter, and the third is a map. We're going to go over all 3 of these right now. And the first thing we're going to do is the sort. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We can sort our data by a specific field. So for right now, the points, it goes 5, 0, 20. But maybe we wanted to organize our data so that it's maybe the people with the most points are on the top, people with the least points are on the bottom. So we're going to say let sorted array equals the data array, which is our original data, dot sorted. And we're going to use the sorted by completion. And we have this kind of funky completion here, but we can just press enter on it. And basically when you sort something, it compares 2 objects in that array. So this is just going to compare one object versus another object. So we'll just call this user1 and we'll just call this user2. And then we need to return a bool. And the bool is basically just some logic on which of these users, user1 or user2, should come first in the list. So we're going to do it by the points. And we're basically going to check if user1 points are greater than user2 points. And I want to clarify that user1 and user2 are not the first and second items of the array, but it's comparing any 2 items in the array. And very simply, we're going to return when user1.points is greater than user2.points. So this is our logic on when to put user1 before user2. And then we can set the filtered array equal to our new sorted array. And we can actually even save one step here. Instead of creating this variable, we can just set the filtered array equal to this. And we no longer need this line, just get it a little shorter. So let's check this out now and put it into our app. So after we call get users, we'll call update filtered array. And then down in our actual arrays bootcamp, instead of showing all of the data array, let's show the filtered array. Let's resume the canvas, and now it should be sorting our array by points. And if we see, I now have Amanda at the top of my list who has 100 points, and Chris down at the bottom with 0. And if I reverse this sign to do less than, we could then organize the opposite with 0 points at the top and 100 at the bottom. I'm going to put it back. And I want to show you guys quickly a shorter way of writing this, because if you're working on a project with more experienced developers, they're probably going to use the shorthand way. So instead of writing all of this out, you could write filtered array equals data array dot sorted. And instead of clicking enter on this, we open the brackets, and then I can use the money sign 0 dot points is greater than money sign 1 dot points. And this money sign 0 is basically just user 1, and a money sign 1 is just user 2 here. So these 3 lines of code is doing the exact same thing as this 1 line of code, except this is obviously much shorter, but beginner developers might not understand what's going on here. So I just wanted to walk you through that. If I comment this out and reload my app, it should still work, and we are now sorted exactly as expected. And I can change the filter to make it go from the least to the most as well. So now you know the shorthand way to do this. And that's it for sorted. Very simple. It takes our data, puts it in an order. All right, let's comment this out. I'm just going to collapse some of the code so that we can see it better. So I'm going to create a multi-line comment with the \**, and then I'm going to close that comment down here with the *\\, and then when we're in this, we can fold up the code, and I'll just give this a title for the sort. All right. Next, we're going to do filter. So let's cut this, put this here. And the logic is going to be very similar to what we just did for the sort. So we're going to say filtered array equals the data array dot filter. And we're going to click enter on this completion. This, of course, is each of these users in the data array. So we'll just call this user. Then we need some logic to return a bool in how we want to filter the users to decide which ones are still going to be included. So in here, we could say return. Maybe we want to return all of the users that have points greater than 50. So we'll say return user.points greater than 50. And if we reconnect the simulator, only the people with points greater than 50 are now connected. We could also do maybe less than 50, and we have all the other people. And we can do maybe user.is verified. So only the people that are verified are going to come up. Or we can add an exclamation point, so anyone who is not verified would come up. Maybe we only want people with the letter I in their name. So we could do user.name.contains the letter I. And this contains is case sensitive, in case you were wondering. So anything with a lowercase I, and now we have Nick, Chris, Emily, and Lisa. Let's change this back to user.isVerified, and there again is a shorter way of writing this that I want to show you guys. It's the same thing as the sort, so we can do filtered array equals data array dot filter, and then we can open the brackets $0 dot is verified. So these three lines doing the same thing as this line, just a little shorter and cleaner. And if I comment this out, you should see that it still works. Beautiful. And now you guys know how to filter on your data array. So I'm again going to create a multi-line comment with the \**. I'll close it down here with the *\\. And then let's just fold that up. Nice and neat. I kind of like how that folded in perfectly. Let's do that for the sort actually. Let's put this and there we go. And now let's do the map. The map's a little trickier, a little more advanced. That's why I'm doing it third. But basically when we're doing a map, we can transform our data from one type to another type. So right now we have a filtered array with an array of users. But maybe for some reason we didn't want to actually display an array of users, we just wanted to display an array of strings. So let's create another @published var. Let's call this mapped array. This will be of type array of string and of string. And now we're going to take our data array and convert all of our users from an array of users to an array of strings. And before we actually do it, let's update our view to look at this array of strings. So I'm going to actually comment out this for each here because we're not going to use that filtered array anymore. And let's just keep it simple with a for each, open parentheses. Let's use the ID and content because we need this hashable environment now for the strings because the strings don't conform to identifiable like the filtered array does. So we'll call it vm.mappedArray \self for the ID. And then here, and then we'll press enter. And here we will loop on maybe the name. And let's just add a very simple text with the name. Let's give it a font of title. Alright, so now we're just going to loop on this mapped array. And if I resume the canvas, it should be blank right now. And let's convert our data array to the mapped array. So let's say mapped array equals data array dot map. And we can now transform our user model into something. So we'll click enter, and this is our current users, so we'll just call this a user. And then we need to return it just says T here. And this is basically just any type we want to return. So we want to return a string, of course, so we'll just make this a string. Now, how can we convert a user to a string? Well, in our user model, the name is already a string, so let's just use the name. So we will return user.name. Alright, so now what is appearing on the screen is no longer an array of a user model, but actually just an array of strings. And you might be wondering, like, when would I ever need to do this? Well, there's a lot of reasons you might map in your actual app. Two that are pretty relevant here is when you're downloading your data, it usually comes in a certain form and doesn't come as a user model. So a lot of times you're going to have to map your data and convert it into a user model. And another common case would be if you were maybe reusing this screen a bunch of times in your app. So maybe one time you wanted to show all of the usernames, but maybe it was a book app, and another time you wanted to use the same screen, but you wanted to show all the book names. Well, your book model and your user model would be different, but you could convert the name for each from the book and from the user into an array of strings, and then always use this array of strings on this view. Alright, so if you're still confused, don't worry about it. Just understand how the map worked. We're converting a user to a string, and of course we can do this the short version as well. We can say mapped array equals data array dot map, open the brackets, money sign is 0 dot name is what we're going to return. It does the exact same thing here. Still works, of course. I also want to show you guys, while we're here, I want to show you the compact map. So let's comment out this mapped array here, and let's pretend for a second that the name in our user model was actually optional. So maybe some users don't actually have their name input into our app. And let's update our test users so that maybe 2 of them don't have a name. So Joe will be nil, and I'll do Lisa is nil. So out of our 10 users, 2 of them don't have a name. And if we put this mapped array back into our code right now, we're going to get an error. And it's because, as you'll see here, every user must return a string when we use the regular map. And that's why this string is not optional. But if we call mapped array dot equals data array dot compact map, click enter, we can add in our user, and then here we can put string, and you'll notice that it's optional. So basically here, this is saying for every user, we absolutely need to return a string. So to fix this version up here, we could say return user's name. Otherwise, if there's no user's name, we'll put error. Let's comment this out at the bottom here for a second. Run our app. So now the 2 people that don't have a name, they're going to come through as an error because with the map, every user was required to return a string. So we have error here and we have an error here. Now if I comment this out and I put our compact map back in, I can also return user.name, and it's not going to yell at me that it's optional. So what happens here is if the user doesn't have a name, it just doesn't include it in the array. So this is a much better UI for a production app because we're going to try to get the user's name, but if we don't, instead of showing an error, we can just ignore it and not use it in our final array. So we don't have any errors here. But of course you can see there's only 8 names because the 2 that don't have name are just totally excluded. And again, we can shorten this with mapped array equals data array dot compact map, open the brackets, $0 dot name. And this does the same thing as this, just a shorter version. Alright guys, and I'm going to backslash, asterisk, asterisk, backslash. Let's fold this up as well. And the last and final thing I want to touch on here is that we can stack these together to get some really complex filtering. So let's say maybe we wanted to first say let sort equals data array dot sorted, and let's use these shorthand. So we'll say open the brackets, $0 dot points greater than $1 dot points. So we'll sort by most points to least points. Then we'll say let filter equals data array dot filter, open the brackets, $0 dot is verified. So we'll only include the people that are verified. And then we'll map those people to our mapped array. So we'll say let map equals data array dot compact map, open the brackets, and we'll return the $0 dot name. So we should understand what each of these does. Sorts by most points, is verified, and then just show the name on the screen. And we can combine all of these instead of calling it 3 times. So we can say mapped array equals data array, and let's first use the sort. So I'm going to copy this and call dot sorted, and I'll put this underneath it like a SwiftUI modifier. Then we'll call dot filtered, and then we'll call dot compact map. I'll delete these, and now we have this really high-tech filtering going on with just very short lines of code here, where we are putting them in order of most points, we're making sure they're all verified, and we're only displaying their name on the screen. So of course this isn't kind of practical in your app. A lot of times you're going to want to actually use the user model, but this was really good practice in that we can stack sorted and filtered and mapping all together to really get the exact data that we want. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed this practice. Get ready for the next couple videos because we're going to start using and working with a lot of data, which is super exciting. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.